Friends, my name is Heather and welcome to Create Your Own Cozy. Today I'm going to do a build with me, but it's a different kind of build with me. We are going to build a focal wall. Now, a couple of disclaimers. I know that I could have purchased raw wood, refinished it to be the way that I wanted it to, but I also know myself and know that that's a whole extra step that was going to make me put this project off a little bit more. Before you tell me you don't have a nail gun, nail guns can easily be rented from Home Depot or from Lowe's. I want to say it's 20 to 40 bucks for a day. So remove that excuse. The next excuse I want you to remove is the fact that you don't know how to use it, because I'm going to go through some basics today to remove some of the fear about using a nail gun. With the newer nail guns, there are so many safeties in place. You have to really be trying to get yourself. You have to put your hand behind where you're shooting. So in my room, I just finished painting 3 of the walls, this lovely blue color, and I will show you that at the end. And my plan was to put these up horizontally, nice and simple. I figured I could figure this out, and I've done this before, but I could figure this out. And there was a pattern, the herringbone pattern, that I loved, but I was like, oh, I don't know if I can totally master that. And then my husband said, I think I like the herringbone much better. I'm like, but that's harder. So I'm going to figure it out today. I have watched a YouTube video that was around 8 minutes long, and the way they described it made it seem like we could totally handle this. The challenge is, and I will link the original video in my description box below, the challenge is these are 2 sisters that do this for a living. So you tend to watch something like that and be like, of course they can do it. I don't do this for a living. I happen to have some tools in my house that I'm not afraid of anymore, but that doesn't mean I didn't start that way. The first time I picked up a nail gun, I was scared to death. But once you understand the operation of it and see how easy it is to use and how you can build so quickly, the fear was removed. And I just wanted to show you that a stay-at-home mom who's self-teaching, not a professional, can do this. So can you. Jen, I'm talking to you. These boards are super light, so as long as they're nailed into the studs behind the drywall, they're not going anywhere. But if you wanted them to go somewhere, you could pop them out. Another thing is hardwood flooring, and this is going to be the same. This needed to be in this room for 72 hours before you install it, so the wood can expand and move around a little bit to kind of get to its normal, because it has been sitting in Home Depot for who knows how long in that environment. It needed to be in this environment because wood can grow and shrink, and you want it to kind of level out with the atmosphere of the room it's going to be in. But within the same box, there is a weathered side and there is a smoother side. So you have 2 different choices. This color that I picked is barnwood gray. It also comes in ivory, charred wood, golden sand, reclaimed brown. So you've got some color options. But I'm going to go with the weathered side. On the box, it tells you how to go get the bare stain that matches this, so that in the end, if you need to do any boards around the border with raw wood, you can get a matching stain to kind of trim it out. So in my mind, I know if the lines on the edge are not perfect, I can add a small trim piece against the wall to make it look like a picture frame, and it will cover up any imperfections if I don't get these just right. But the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to find the absolute center of the wall. Width and height, find my center of my wall. The second thing I'm going to do is use my stud finder to find all the studs on this wall. And I'm going to use some painter's tape and put it at the baseboard so that I can see going up where each of the studs are, even when I cover it. Because if I put that on the wall and I cover it, then I'll lose my track of where it is. So I'm going to mark it on the floor so that I can see that that is the line going all the way up. So I know that that's where I'm going to nail all the way through. I may, it depends on how the nail marks look, I may be puttying those with some wood putty and using that stain to cover that. It just depends on, I don't want it to look like, because they're going to be in lines. I'd rather it be random, but if it has to be in a line, I don't know that I want these lines of nail marks. So that is also an option. I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'll check back in. I'm going to move slowly because I'm learning and I'm teaching you as I go. But I'm so excited. I know that the warmth in this room, this is my create room. This is where I create. And I realize that my family, it's supposed to be my room. It's not my office, it's my create room. This is where my family ends up congregating, and we have conversations and we have rest. So having this cozy wall, having the room painted, man, I'm so excited. This space is going to be so transformed. Thank you so much for joining me. This is a stud finder. Basically how you use it is you put it on the wall, you push the button, and then as you move, it'll beep when it can tell that there's wood. So it's a relatively inexpensive tool to have, and even if you just hang heavy stuff on the wall, it's worth an investment to be able to put it directly into the stud, the wood behind the drywall, so that there's not a chance of your drywall ripping from too much weight. So I'm going to go ahead and do this again lower so that I can mark it with tape. This is new construction, and these studs are about 1.5 feet apart. And your electrical outlets are always going to be near a stud because it needs something to latch onto. It doesn't just float in your wall, it's attached to some wood. So that can help you. And know that it's going about 1.5 feet. It depends on when your house was built. I'm sure the standards didn't used to be this. It's a good guideline. Hey Henry, are you helping me? Henry, are you helping me on my project? Hey sweet boy. The first thing that I need to do, the most important part, is your first 2 pieces of wood. If you get that exactly right, everything else should go pretty quickly. So the first thing I'm going to do is mark the center. The next thing is you butt them up and you draw a line. Henry, buddy, you gotta move. There's the center of that one and the center of that one. You draw a line through. It didn't work. Pencils. You've drawn a straight line by taking a couple different measurements and putting a straight edge, which was this piece of board, since I knew it was straight. You're going to use this straight line as a guide to start in the center. To start in the center, where you're going to line your lines up. Most important part, line your lines up for the first two. And then you find out where your stud is. There's number one. I just have one on each side at each stud. It's very much on the wall. Second part. Is I make sure that the ends are butted up and then the lines match. And let's find my stud. All right, let's do a pan out. Now, as you can see, they're not even. That's the way it's supposed to be. And that's completely fine. No panicking, because it'll all even out once you keep this pattern up. So the pattern is going to go but this one up here fits perfect. But this one up here, it fits perfect. Now you can see the benefit of having professionally milled, exact same size. So this is going to be the quick part, just filling it all in. The time-consuming part is going to be when you get to the pieces that need to be cut. Also, make sure you go one side then the other, one side then the other. Don't go stack, stack, because then your patterns are going to get all off. Okay, I have officially finished the part of the wall that I can do without making any cuts. The next part is going to be time consuming. So basically what I'm going to do now is maybe do 2 boards at a time so that I can remember where they go, my sanity, and to get me some steps. So what I'll do is I'll go up there and I'll draw a line for where this needs to be cut. Something that the tutorial did say is that every cut should be a 45-degree angle, so I will just keep my saw at a 45-degree angle downstairs. These saws can be rented too. So I'm going to get that started, and I'm also going to save every piece I cut off, because when I get to the ends and the corners, all the angles are going to be right. There could be some that fit well, so it's like a big old puzzle, and good for me, I love puzzles. So let's see how this goes. Haha, 45-degree angles. If I was a professional, maybe that would be the case. So I am probably about 6 boards into all the extra cuts that need to be made around the ceiling and eventually get to the walls. I have tripped down the stairs and did a wood burn on my wall. Need to note that I have wood on my wall now, and I could get burned if I... So here is what I figured out. I'm about 2 degrees off of 45. Whatever. You won't be able to tell when it's done. That's what I say. No one's going to be measuring perfectly imperfect. This is barnwood. This is not pristine trim. So this is what I've been doing. Because you can't just kick the wood up because there's a ceiling, I've been taking this end all the way to the ceiling, putting this straight edge against the existing trim, and drawing whatever line would make the right line. Then I'm going to the bottom and making that 90-degree line so that I can just cut the angle, cut the straight line. I'm not dealing with an extremely long piece of wood going all over the place. Also, we will be trimming these edges out. They are not straight. I'm going to show you how I can hide the fact that it's not perfect. Also, my husband decided to take a little snack break. And he walks in the room and he says, and I looked at him, I'm like, I wish I would have done straight. I will be glad at the end that I want the more complex pattern, but right now, I wish I would have just done straight. And he's like, oh, it looks so good, it looks so good. He walks up to the wall and he's like, there's a mistake. And I'm like, you can leave this room right now. The nerve as I show him my bloody elbow. As I'm in the middle of the most stressful part. This is the part where I'm like, why did I do this? I'm gonna finish this, darn it, because this room is not gonna stay this way. But do not come when you told me to do a complex pattern and start nitpicking. Woo! Woo! Anyway, I'm gonna keep trucking because I'm gonna be glad. And look at it. It's looking good. Just need to finish. Okay. The electrical receptacle space. The key for cutting things with jigsaws is to make sure you're really pushing down on your wood, because the jigsaw can make the whole thing just shake. just got back from the Home Depot to trade out the pack that wasn't quite colored right. My body hurts from my little trip down the step stool yesterday, but I am going to finish this today. I can see now why the tutorial I watched, why they kind of skipped through the middle, because here's the deal with wood. They're not all the same. So saying that it's 45 degrees, that the cut is always 45 degrees, that's not the case. There is a tool that I've seen on Pinterest. If I ever do this again, that tool would be super helpful. So here's the thing about wood. It's usually going to cup one way or the other. So this piece right here is cupping down a little bit. Sometimes it cups the other way. And because I'm using only one side, that causes it to not necessarily lay as flat as it could. But again, this is an imperfect look. Just requires a little bit more puzzles, and there's one board that I went and made 4 different cuts on to make sure it fit right. It is what it is. I am super excited about how this is looking. I will be glad when it's done and I can just stare at it every day. And I will be glad it's not just a straight wall. So I've come up with some little tricks. As you can see, with a long piece of wood, it's kind of hard to get that angle right. So there's a lot of scraps. What I've been doing is taking a scrap where I know that the angle's right, and then what I do is I measure the rest to see what this piece needs to be from the straight edge down to the angle. And then what I do is whatever that measurement is, I put it on the piece of wood, and then I put my angle to where that needs to be and draw that so that I know the cut that needs to be made. And sometimes they need a little bit more adjustment, because the other thing is walls aren't straight, baseboards aren't straight. When it's all put together, it's going to look amazing, but just because you know precise math doesn't mean it's going to translate that way. This piece right here, it has probably been 12 different cuts to get this to fit right. I was so stinking stubborn, I did not want to use another board for this. I just kept getting inches off, 1/8 of an inch off at a time. One of the angles is against the wall, one is against the ceiling. But I won. I have victory. Bam. And bam. This is what some of the seams look like. Lots of spaces. Not really the finished look that I was going for. However, look what happens. This is what happens after you put the putty in those spaces. All of a sudden, the only problem is now the color. If you look over to this area, this is where I've stained putty, and it's very minimal. Also, this is what happens when you put your framing around. All of a sudden it looks like a professional did it. I'm in love with it. I am so glad that I did the extra work for the herringbone pattern. However, this is my 4th day. I started a little while ago. Now, I didn't work full days because the kids get home at 2:30. And I do have other things to do. However, my original video said they got it done in 4 hours. That's the benefit of having 2 people working on it. But I have some things that I learned, and I jotted them down so that I wouldn't forget them. The first thing that I learned is if you bought a ceiling fan for said room you're about to put a wall in, put the ceiling fan up first. Don't install a new wall for 4 days and not have your ceiling fan working, whatever. The second thing is I learned at the end to make templates for the angles. And I wish I would have done that sooner. And/or I wish I would have had that tool that I mentioned before that you can just put in the angles and then you put it on top of the wood and you can cut the exact right amount. This particular wood that I used was so light. I don't know that being in the studs was necessarily that important. They really were so light they would snap if you leaned on it the wrong way. I think what's more important that you get it on all sides and corners. So see how it lays on the wall. Make sure you secure it so that it lays as flat as the piece can be. Again, with the cupping of wood, some of them can't lay super flat, but it's barn wood looking, so it's okay for it to be imperfect. The instructions say to use glue. I disagree with that. I will show you, I have a pile of, I didn't get the board right, so I would pull it out of the wall and take out the nails. I have a pile of nails left over, and I think that if you had glue attached to that as well, that just adds more of a mess. These things are so light. I am not at all worried about them coming out, but if you need them to, a crowbar, you can get them off without ruining your wall behind it. Took longer than I thought it would. That's what happens with a complex pattern. I think it was worth it because it's done and I love it. I thought in the beginning I'd only need 8 boxes because there are 14.5 square feet per box. However, because I wanted as full pieces as possible and there's weird angles, I have quite a bit of leftover wood, but these pieces couldn't be used, so I needed an extra box, and that's just the complex pattern of a herringbone pattern. You're going to use more product than you would if it was just a straight across. If I was a beginner, I would have done it straight across, or pick like a little half bath in your house and do a test straight across to see that you have the patience to do a more complex pattern. If you are not a beginner, this is totally doable. Now halfway through I would have said, why in the world did I do this? But now that it's done, I'm way more proud of this wall and being able to see it on a daily basis. And I'm glad I didn't settle for just a straight across. But if you're at the beginner level, I would just do straight across, because here's the thing with straight across wood. It has that ship lap look to it, where the gaps are kind of cute and quirky, and the gaps are not cute and quirky in the herringbone pattern. Because you're saying, hey, I'm putting something crazy on this wall, and the gaps just look like you messed up. If you're going to do the herringbone pattern, it's important that you get professionally milled pieces. It was a little off as it is, with everything being exactly square on the long ends and the top ends. This part is the part that messed me up a little bit, but if these were wonky too, forget it. It would have been a mess. If you're doing straight across, you can get away with a little bit more of that because it has that mismatched, it's all at least straight, and you can level things out, where the herringbone pattern, once you get it started, you're kind of stuck with that. So if you have pieces that are not the same size, that would have caused trouble. The important part with this wood filler is that you have a very, very wet rag, and very soon after you put it on there, rinse it off the wood as much as you can so that it's only in the places that you want to fill, because it does dry a little orange and that stains a little different than the regular wood. So I did some of the first testing behind where I knew the furniture would be and learned that lesson. Another thing is I started staining just the cracks, and I decided to stain the whole pieces of wood at the same time. So I stained the wood again, it's the same color, along with the cracks, and that allowed it to look streamlined and finished and polished, and it came out looking even better than I thought it would. So stay tuned. After this, I'm going to have just very basic tutorials on nail gun use and jigsaw use. If you're interested in those, they're just really basic to kind of remove some of the fear and to let you learn a little bit more about those tools. But thank you so much for joining me. And please don't forget to like this video, comment on what other tutorials you want to see from me, and please share this with your friends. It just helps my channel out. So thank you. Bye. I have the Ryobi toolkits that use the one battery. So all of these batteries are interchangeable. When I have these laying around the house, something I do for safety is always take out the battery. That way my 6-year-old's not going to just grab it and do something. To load it is very much like a stapler. Just think of this as a heavy-duty stapler. I have an 18 gauge nail. They're 2 inches long. I figured that should be enough. I don't know that my gun might be able to go up to 2.5 inches. They're the size that you get, however wide this chamber is kind of the extent of the nails you're allowed to use. So you basically take it like a stapler, shove it all the way in here. The mechanism is it grabs one from the top just like a stapler and pushes it out into the wall. You close it. Again, no battery, no issue. The safety precautions that this has on it is I can put this in, and if it's not pushing against anything right here, it won't discharge. So you have to be pushing in on your thing to activate it. You see that the light comes on, and then pull the trigger. So you can't walk around and just shoot people. It has to be up against an edge. So those are the safety precautions that help me feel I understand how this works. The battery's out, my kid's not going to get into it. It loads just like a stapler, and I feel strong and powerful. What is better than that? So this particular one did not come with blades. I bought a blade set that has multiple. I'm going to pick the one for clean wood. You need to look to see what kind of blade it requires. This one requires a T shank end where it's like a T. There are others that are shaped like a U. They'd be called a U shank. So make sure you get the right jigsaw blades for your thing, and it's basically how it attaches to the jigsaw. So just reading through the instructions, this right here is the guard. So we want the blade to be facing forward. We're going to pull this in like this, drop this down, and then let go. That's it. Blades installed. Alright, so trigger. This is where the speed, I would start out slow and go faster. That's when things can start to shake. So if you're doing a lot of cutting, you pull right here and you lock it. So you're not just squeezing the whole time, and then just grab that to unlock. This right here is when you're doing straight cuts. If you're cutting a circle, which I will be doing in later videos, you turn it so it allows the blade to kind of tilt a little bit. But since we're doing straight cuts, that explains it. That will keep the blade nice and straight.